When's the last time you all heard someone say they bought something from RadioShack? Some of you may have never even heard of RadioShack. Long before we used to buy our electronics from places like Amazon and Best Buy, there was a retail electronics company known as RadioShack. Over the last 100 years, RadioShack has seen many ups and downs. At one point, it had more than 4,300 stores across North America, and if you're like me, you may have even grown up visiting their stores as a kid. Eventually, things started to go downhill. Today, with less than 400 stores nationwide, their new owner has big plans to make a comeback through its online presence. So, what went wrong with RadioShack? How did such a large entity get wiped out? This is the story of the demise of RadioShack. RadioShack was founded by two brothers in 1921 in Boston. It was started as a small retail mail order business that supplied radio equipment. The company did well over the next few decades, and it opened its first audio showroom in 1947. The showroom featured audio equipment such as speakers, amplifiers, turntables, and phonograph cartridges. In 1963, the company was acquired by Charles D. Tandy, who owned a very successful leather goods company. You guys might be wondering why someone who owns a leather goods company would want to buy a radio equipment company. Those two things seemingly have nothing in common. Well, Tandy understood business and realized the potential of RadioShack. Immediately after the acquisition, he made changes to the company. One of the changes was closing the large stores and opening smaller stores with less space. This was obviously to reduce cost and save money. Getting rid of the items that were in very little demand and that did not contribute a lot to RadioShack's revenues was a very effective strategy. It not only allowed RadioShack to minimize their costs, it also allowed them to move into smaller stores and increase their reach with more locations. Over the next couple of decades, RadioShack flourished with this strategy. During the 1970s and 1980s, RadioShack started selling electronic items other than radio equipment. In 1972, they sold the first all-electronic calculators. Then in 1977, RadioShack introduced the first mass-marketed, fully assembled personal computer, the TRS-80. Fun fact for you all though, the operating system of that computer was built by none other than Bill Gates. In 1984, RadioShack sold its first mobile phone. They followed it up with an introduction of satellite TV systems in 1985, and by the early 1990s, RadioShack had a huge variety of products and the company was doing reasonably well. This was also the time when cell phones started to become mainstream, and RadioShack's cell phone sales soared. Cell phones seemed to be the wave of the future, and the company decided to put more focus into their cell phone business. Considering you may be watching this on your cell phone, or your cell phone is probably less than 2 feet away from you, that sounds like a smart move, right? During the 1990s and 2000s, RadioShack expanded all over North America. The company introduced many new products and services. They launched a big box chain, developed a cellular, internet, and satellite subscription service, and even launched an in-store wireless kiosk. However, gradually the company started losing money. By 2011, RadioShack realized that it was way too dependent on its cell phone business, which had started to die down due to the fact that consumers preferred to get their phones from the same companies that provided them with cellular service. RadioShack kept making changes in senior management and had 7 CEOs within a span of 10 years, from 2005 to 2014, which you can imagine isn't a good sign. The constant change in leadership, which prevented any sort of long-term strategy, and bad financial decisions led the company filing for bankruptcy in 2015. Right after bankruptcy, RadioShack was bought by Standard General. They tried to get the company back on its feet, but failed. And in 2017, RadioShack once again filed for bankruptcy. Now stay with us to find out where RadioShack stands today. RadioShack made many terrible decisions that led to its imminent downfall, but here are the top 5 biggest mistakes that led to the demise of RadioShack. Over the past few decades, we have seen many companies die due to aggressive expansion. What usually happens is that a couple of good years in sales lead the companies to believe that there is a higher demand for their stores in a particular area. they open up more stores, and when the demand normalizes or a period of economic downturn comes, the company gets into financial difficulties. Such rapid expansion was one of the major reasons behind RadioShack's demise. In 2014, RadioShack operated about 4,300 stores in North America. Many of the stores were located too close to each other, and there was even a location with more than 25 stores in a 25-mile radius. Such a high store density meant that many of the stores were competing against each other for sales. The cost of managing so many stores was too high, while the revenues that could be extracted from the customers in a particular area were limited. This led to the company experiencing significant losses from 2012 onwards. During the early 1990s, RadioShack's decision to focus on cell phones and neglect other product lines was another reason behind its demise. While they did anticipate correctly that cell phones were going to be the future and were going to be huge in the coming years, they failed to incorporate a successful business model. RadioShack was just a cell phone retailer. They did not make any cell phones, they were not a service provider, and all they did was sell the phones. Over time, as cell phones got into the mainstream, the cell phone networks such as Verizon, AT&T, and others started offering phones along with their services. The customers started getting their phones directly from their service providers. So naturally, RadioShack's cell phone business declined significantly. RadioShack had put too much focus on just selling the cell phone and accessories. The right strategy would have been to continue to invest in other consumer electronic items alongside cell phones, or found a way to sell the cell service in conjunction with the phone. It would not be wrong to say that RadioShack could have been managed much better, and if that was the case, the company may have had a different fate. From 2005 to 2014, RadioShack changed its CEO 7 times. This meant that no CEO could really determine and work on a long-term strategy to get the company out of financial trouble. In 2013, Joseph Magnacca was appointed RadioShack's CEO. Although he was given the task to speed up the turnaround and restore profitability by 2015, his plans backfired, leading to significant costs incurred by the company and ultimately leading to bankruptcy. One of the biggest mistakes that RadioShack made in its history was not building an online presence early on. The company kept expanding its retail stores and did not acknowledge that the future of retail was online. By the time RadioShack realized that it needed to expand beyond its retail stores, it was too late. Amazon and other online retailers had already captured a vast majority of the consumer electronics business. It was just way too convenient for people to purchase consumer electronics, their parts, and accessories online. Product specifications could easily be found online as well, and the information was always available. With such convenience, it wasn't worth the hassle of going to a physical RadioShack store to look for an item, which they may or may not even have in stock. And also, electronics aren't something where people had to see or feel it all the time in person before buying it. The consumer could easily evaluate products by simply going through their specifications online. Over the years, RadioShack made some terrible financial decisions. In 2011, the company was doing fairly well, posting profits of $72 million that year, but in 2012, things took a turn for the worse, and they posted a loss of $139 million. In 2013, things were even worse, and they posted a loss of a whopping $400 million. Soon after, RadioShack was taken off the New York Stock Exchange as their share price plummeted, and they were simply not trading enough shares. So in 2013, RadioShack was in desperate need of money to stay afloat. In October of 2013, they managed to get a $585 million line of credit from GE Capital and a $250 million loan from Salus. The Salus loan came with a condition that played a major role in RadioShack's future bankruptcy. According to the loan terms, RadioShack could not close more than 200 stores per year without Salus's consent. This meant that RadioShack had thousands of stores that were losing money and they could not close them simply because Salus wouldn't agree. Talk about strings attached. So, you may be asking yourself, who owns RadioShack today? Is there any hope for them? Well, in November of 2020, RadioShack's intellectual property and its remaining operations were purchased by Retail E-commerce Ventures, with the goal of reviving RadioShack through its online presence. This Florida-based company, owned by e-commerce mastermind Tai Lopez, has also recently purchased other defunct retailers like Pier 1 Imports, Linens and Things, and Model Sporting Goods. Tai and his team definitely have their work cut out for them. I mean, When was the last time you thought to Google Radio Shack when you were looking for the latest and greatest electronics, huh? Do you even know what their URL is? I won't spoil it for you by telling you though, it's common sense, guys. To give you some perspective, the Radio Shack website averages about 350,000 visits a month, which sounds like a lot, right? To provide you with a comparison, Best Buy gets over 285 million views a month, and other retailers like Newegg get 35 to 40 million visits a month, while B&H Photo gets around 30 million views a month. I have to say, Radio Shack is embracing its not-so-stellar past, and their current tagline on their website is, "Radio your friends, the Shack is back." Today, Radio Shack is just a shadow of the massive entity that once ruled the consumer electronics market during the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Do you think it has what it takes to make a comeback? Let us know by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and make sure to press the bell icon as well. Be sure to check back on Mondays because we will be dropping another interesting business story every week right here on Mogul Monday.